It's late fall and it's time to protect the potted Japanese maples in the garden. This is a tree and pot I wrapped up the other day, and I'm going to show you the materials you need and the simple procedures to protect your potted Japanese maples. So this is one pot I've just pulled out from several that need doing. There's a few little bits of weeds growing in the compost which I've pulled out, and as you can see there's a couple of roots exposed there. This is because this tree was only repotted earlier in the year and the compost is sunken down a little bit, so I'm just going to put a fine layer of compost to cover those roots. Now I'm only going to take it up to about here. I'm not going to go any higher because that's where the level has been in the past when it was potted. If you go higher, it's going to rot that bark, the bottom of the trunk there. So you can use general compost, irrigaceous compost, or I'm going to just use a thin layer of peat, just simply because I've got peat at hand and Japanese maples love peat. So that'll be the first job I'll do. Secondly, I've just pulled out some string and wrapped the string round the pot and left about 6 inches either side excess. So once I put the bubble wrap on, wrap the string around the pot and tie it in a bow. So you need 2 bits of string, just like that, a pair of scissors and some bubble wrap. Now the bubble wrap, quick way of measuring the bubble wrap is simply measure the height from the ground to the top of the pot and add on about an inch, inch and a half, even 2 inches if you want, past the top of the pot. Lie it down on your big roll of bubble wrap and again measure that, and that gives you your depth. So you just cut the bubble wrap, and the way to measure your bubble wrap is take one of your bits of string, lay it out on the bubble wrap and do two lengths of the string. That shows you've gone round the pot, you've got enough bubble wrap to go around the pot twice. That's without having to get the tape measure out. It's a quick, easy way to do it. And I've got some peat at hand, or compost, general compost like I've already said. And this year I'm just going to use some leaves from the garden. These are silver birch leaves, because literally the garden's full of fallen leaves from next door's huge silver birches. And in nature, this is natural mulch that just literally falls to the ground, and the trees get naturally mulched over the winter, and these will rot down and these will create nutrients in the soil to help feed the trees as well. You can use chipped bark if you haven't got any leaves, and you just put a layer of chipped bark on the top. You want about an inch layer, inch deep, but don't forget where the layer of the compost ends here on your trunk. Don't put the bark up against your trunk, because that's going to be damp over the winter and it's going to rot your base of your trunk. So you always take a couple of inches space around the trunk. Okay. Now my thinking is, if you had a piece of plastic, you could wrap a piece of plastic round there and staple it possibly an inch or an inch and a half to hold the compost, the bark back, so it's not touching the stem over the winter. Sometimes it might get blown around, so you're going to have to check this now and again over the coming months until next spring. So basically that's what you have to do first. So you get your bubble wrap around the pot, 2 bits of string, tie them in a bow, so next year you can just take that bow off easily, undo it, take your string, put it aside, take your bubble wrap, roll it up, put it away for next year, and you can reuse these 2 materials next year. Any dead leaves that'll still be in your pot next spring, you can just throw them back on the garden in the soil and dig them in. If it's bark, like this tree here, I've just put fresh bark down. I like to take that bark out and just put that in the garden that's has bark already in that spot, or just stick it in with the soil. So I'll put some fresh bark down next spring. I just like to keep renewing that bark. And that's about it really. You don't put bubble wrap under the base of your pot for the simple reason once it rains the water's going to have to flow out, and you don't insulate the bottom because your plant's going to be standing in water and it's going to rot the roots. Also, you can stand this on where it's going to drain. Be careful where you stand in the pot, because sometimes once it rains heavily, the place where you stand it might flood and might be standing in water for a day or two, which is not going to do your tree any good. So you can always put it on top of bricks or bits of wood or another paving stone and heighten it up so it's not standing in water. What else there was something else I was going to say as well. You can do a little bit pruning at this point because the leaves have all fallen. You can check for any dieback. This tree was only pruned earlier in the year, so there's basically nothing on the tree that needs pruning apart from one little bit of dieback there. So I'll just prune it back to just past this bud here. Just trim that off. And the position where to put your pots once you've insulated them. We're in the northeast of England here, and I like to put the pots just next to the house, where it's usually a couple of degrees warmer and the frost isn't hitting the house as much as it is the garden. So it's getting a lot more protection there near the house, obviously because of the house is protecting the pots, that area, from wind, rain and the frost. So I like to keep them close to the house, and that last year we didn't get any frost on the pots, frost in the garden but not near the house, so I tend to keep them there. Obviously if you're in a colder climate, like a lot of places in America, you can put your pots inside a garage or a shed over the winter, but just check online where you are and take some advice on what cold climate you are and what protection you'll need. And this year I bought a big roll of greenhouse insulation bubble wrap because it's a lot cheaper than buying bubble wrap like stationery wise. This big roll was about 30 meters long by 2.5 foot wide, so that's going to do a lot of pots. You can ask your friends and family to keep an eye out for pots. If you get appliances packaged to keep the bubble wrap for future, it always comes in handy. You can always reuse it. It's a lot cheaper than buying it, but this was a much better, cheaper option this year, this big roll. So that's about it really. You've got your before and your after protection, and this is only going to take a few minutes to do, so it helps you protect the trees against the frost and stops them from dying off. So next video I'll show you how to protect the Japanese maples in the garden that's in the ground, which is a little bit easier. But for now, this is how to protect the Japanese maples that's in the pots.